Okay, we'll call our meeting to order. Have your attention, please. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. It's a Zoom meeting, it's a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded at this time. We are expecting Mayor Hess to show up. He had an NEDC meeting at 5:30. He should be heading over shortly after that. So tonight's meeting is the Board of Education budget. You know, that makes up about 50% of the town budget. For the finance board members, we'll be hearing the presentation. If you're not aware that the finance board can either accept the budget as presented, we can increase or decrease, but we cannot decrease less than last year's allocation. Unlike the other departments, we have no say on individual line items inside the Board of Ed budget. That's just the way the system is set up. So Chris Montini, I'm going to turn the floor over to Chris, Superintendent. He's going to run through a presentation on the budget, and we have board member, education members here also. Several, okay. We'll be available to answer any questions that we have on the budget. Okay, it's a very complex budget. There's a lot of moving parts to it. Chris, turn it over to you. Great.
Thank you. Chairman Hanks, members of the Finance Board of Burgesses, thank you for having us here tonight to present to you the Board of Education's budget request to the borough. As you know, developing a budget is never an easy task and comes with many tough decisions. In a few minutes, Superintendent Montini will present to you a budget in the amount of $67,485,698, which represents an increase of 4.59%. This budget and this number is the culmination of many meetings of the Board Finance Committee and board workshops. The main drivers of the budget include health insurance costs, transportation costs, and tuition. The board worked hard together to get to the request of this amount that provides for our students and ensures they receive the learning and services that they deserve and need. The budget is presented will allow the board to educate our students so they can become the vision of the graduate. Again, thank you for having us here tonight, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Montini to present the board request to the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you and good evening, everyone. Excuse me. First, logistics. If you would like to use the mic, you hit the, well, I guess that's a periwinkle color there and to use the mic. We tested the owl out from all around the room today since it's a larger group. And you certainly don't need the mics, but if you are soft-spoken and you'd like it, and you're on this end of the table, that's how those mics work. So on behalf of the board, myself and the Norfolk Public Schools, first and foremost, thank you for all that you do to support our schools, the students in this community. I know you have many Mondays out, whether you're in Zoom and or in person, really from a community that is not the most affluent community, and we don't have the tax base perhaps that we would like. And I know how seriously you take your roles, your jobs, and have provided well for us over the years. I stand to you today to talk to you about our budget, but really it's not just our budget. It's how we run our schools, provide services and programs. It's how we take care of your children, our children, collectively, the children of this great borough. I'm going to start with the vision of our graduate. It's our guiding light. Everything that we do is in service of the vision of the graduate. We hire teachers, provide resources, feed our students. Everything that we do is in effort to cultivate in our students the attributes of the vision of our graduate, so that when they leave us and they venture out in the world, they're empowered and they have the skills, the know-how, and the drive to choose their own path rather than external forces choosing a path for them. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go to work? Do they want to go to the military? Do they want to learn a trade? Our goal with the town support and resources is to provide the programming to enable all students when they leave us to be the vision of the graduate and choose their path. And each year, in order to do that, we engage in strategic planning. We are continuous improvement, and all that we do is at the heart of what we do. We can always do better. We can always get better. We have our priorities this year centered around academic excellence, positive culture and climate, developing robust systems to support students, and hiring the best teachers and the best staff that we can. For we know that the best strategy is to put a talented, high-quality teacher in front of every student. So I'm going to talk with you today at the onset of our presentation about some bright spots and some joyous moments that we've had throughout the year. I shared these at some board meetings and with communications with our board, whether it's a bulletin board, the first week of school where our kindergartners come in and they establish hopes and dreams. They're establishing goals right at the onset of their educational career. What do they aspire? So that we can begin to support them, to help them become the vision of our graduate. Or it's our young third grade student with Senator Murphy winning an essay contest. Our band going to this 4th of July play in Washington, DC, because they won Connecticut, they won New England, and they placed 3rd nationally. And they're going to play in the national 4th of July parade this upcoming 4th. Or our track stars going to nationals, all state going to nationals. From an academic perspective, we continue to push students, challenge them, support them to take more rigorous coursework. We have more students taking ECE courses, we have more students taking AP courses, and our graduation rate of 90.6 is at an all-time high. On the right-hand side of the presentation, you'll see a breakdown of those going to 4-year college, 2-year college, military, etc. That bottom percentage, 12% had an alternate plan. 12% keeps me up at night. We won't rest until every single one of our students, each and every one, has a plan and can choose their path. Continuous improvement in all that we do is important. It's who we are, it's what we strive for, and we'll continue to work very, very hard so that number is a 0. Not all kids are going to go to college. We want them to be able to choose. We had 2 schools this year that were schools of distinction, Andrew Avenue Elementary School and Hot Brook Elementary School. And that means out of all of the schools in Connecticut, they were in the top 10% for growth. Top 10% Andrew Avenue for growth in math for high need students. Hot Brook Elementary School, school of distinction, high growth in ELA for the high needs student population and the whole school. Top 10%. That's something of which we are very proud. And we look to continue to have more schools of distinction in the future. We have an engaged board, committed. We have strong community partnerships, Veterans Council, the mayor reading to students, every kid student at Salem. Sorry, the Zoom box is blocking my screen here. Yeah, I forgot I'm on charge here. Sorry. Can't move the Zoom box. At Salem School, receiving a library card in their partnership with the children's librarian there. The picture on the lower left, too many community folks. This is an annual affair where lots of business folks downtown go and interview our students to, again, prepare them and set them up for that choice. What are they going to do? Too many to mention there. I'm sure you recognize some of your colleagues and friends. We are the vision of the graduate. We're problem solvers, we're artists, we're performers, we're collaborators, we're cultivators, we're growers, we're speakers. That's who we are, and that's what our budget is really about. We'll talk now, we're going to shift to dollars and cents. But when I think about a budget, it's really the beginning of our game plan to provide for our students. So I'm going to shift and get into who are our students, who is the Naugatuck Public School student. So in terms of enrollment, when we track October to October, we are relatively flat. We are 4,320 students. We have 200, excuse me, our EL population, students who are multilingual learners, has over the course, as you can see from the bar graph, of the last few years has increased dramatically. 58.1% of our students qualified for free and reduced lunch. Now that's not on an application basis. If you remember, since 2019, we began the CEP program, which is Community Eligibility Program. So this number represents those are receiving direct support from the state. And that's 58%, and our high school graduation rate we have been working on is a slow and steady increase. We're at an all-time high of 90.6%. Enrollment changes. So between 21 and 22 and currently, when we publish our budget book, we look at October data so that we can have a consistent point of reference across years. We were -4 students. When we created the presentation on February 6th, we have 50 more students now than we did last year. Our enrollment includes 47 more students with IEPs, an increase of 6.21% in 1 year, 89 more multilingual learners. That's an increase of 25% in 1 year. And it doubled, as you saw in that bar graph, the previous slide, from 2015 to 2018 rather, to what we're projecting in 2023. And that is a conservative estimate. We're not going up 25% like this year. We're using the 5-year average. Our families speak 42 different languages. 80% English is their primary language, 8% Spanish, 7% Portuguese, and then some others. Arabic, French, Polish are the next 3, all around 1%. So when you look at the enrollment changes over the course of 5 years, you'll note that they are relatively flat, projecting a small increase from so next year. The percentage of students directly certified is an increase of 31% when you look at the increase, but then total percentage points 13 from 44 to 58. Again, sorry, I can't see the rest of that slide. So we find ourselves, as likely you know, having had lots of budget presentations already, in a context that of fiscal challenges, economic factors that are challenging. The rate of inflation December to December was 8.1%. COLA, Social Security benefits went up by 8.7%. Minimum wage will increase again to $15 in June. We are nearing the end of and losing federal COVID money, ARP and ESSER. There are personnel and staffing shortages and increased staffing transiency. Teacher prep programs from 2010 to 2018 decreased by 41%. And I can tell you at the pandemic, they only went down. Increased cost of utilities, supplies, transportation, tuition, and health insurance. And so, like the board chair mentioned a few minutes ago, we are here to request a budget in the amount of $67,485,698, an increase of just under $3 million at 4.59%. We also are asking the continuation for the additional $1.8 million for insurance costs. You may have seen, as I sent this to you ahead of time with the recording and the digital copy of the budget, history of the last several budget cycles. And yes, this is higher when we get to the drivers. This is a higher request than has been typical and then has been awarded. But it is needed now because of the aforementioned economic factors and momentarily when I get to the drivers. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we got to the 4.59%. As is typical, the majority of the funds of the budget go to salaries and to benefits. Here you can see we are just under 80% at 79% when you add the benefits and the salary line. Now that's actually lower than is typical because the drivers for this are not related to those 2 series. So that's down a few percent. I don't know in my time that we've ever been below 80% from those 2 series. When you look at our series, you will notice that, Lee, if you're there, is there any way to move the, if there's any way that you could move the bar so that I could see the entire slide? Okay, so salaries are coming in at a variance of 19,000. Benefits are, unless it's, I'm able to do it myself. It is me.
Yep.
Awesome.
You could just drag it.
Beautiful.
There you go.
So long as you guys don't mind, I'll pop up the people. It's kind of small for now. So when you take a look at the different series, you'll notice that salaries are an increase of 19,000. In a few slides, we we enacted some strategies, made some cuts to get that subsection lower. Benefits, an increase of roughly 800,000, purchase services, 1.8 million, supplies, 323,000, and flat on capital. We are projecting some revenue changes. We have a projected revenue, an increase in revenue of 700,000, which is already included in what you're seeing, the budget that was put forth. Mostly, and that's attributed to increase in the alliance, offset by a reduction associated with some school readiness slots. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about this page. This page essentially is for those in those departments where you go line by line. These are the lines taken out that are really driving the increased the request for the increase. First, and we do this every year, the first line essentially is what we call a rollover budget. If we had all of our staff and we have kept everybody in all of the positions with the contractual increases, what would the increase be? And the answer to that is 859,000. We had other net salary savings. We reduced 11.0 FTEs in this budget. We anticipated salary savings, an increase in salary savings, and we applied some increased revenue. And 840,000 of that decreased the 859 to the 19,000 you saw on the other page. So generally, we're coming with salary increases to you, not today, not this time. Oh, I forgot I put some graphics in there. I should have clicked sooner. So there's the Garnet Oval. Next, hold on, there you go. We're going to talk about healthcare. We're up for renewal, but because of our contract, we have a max of 6.9, a renewal cap. I see Dorothy nodding her head, just like old times, Dorothy, discussing Board of Education budget. So that number is 832,000. So we are still expecting some information throughout the spring when that gets finalized. But what we know is that 832 is the top of what our cap would be. There's others here, refuse, and I'm going to get into them in a few other slides. But another driver, transportation, $480,000 increase. We did our quote unquote door-to-door transportation contract. We have STA. So when we quote unquote think about the buses that drive the kids in town, we extended that contract. By the way, the renewals for contracts for transportation right now, 10%, 11%. We were able to extend it in year 1 to 1.5%. But the out-of-district transportation is increased by 71.7%. Now, throughout COVID, if you've followed some of the news, there's a significant shortage for drivers, there has been. And in Eastern Connecticut, during the height of COVID, we're actually in conversation, and I don't know if it ever came to fruition, but having National Guard drive school buses. They were running split shifts on their schools like you do in a significant renovation because they couldn't get enough drivers. We were really fortunate and have a great partnership with STA here. We played all of our sports. We didn't alter much. But out of district, those folks that have a need to be transported outside of Naugatuck, that has increased significantly. One of the reasons it increased significantly is we had a really good contract that the people that bid probably bid way too low. So we were really fortunate for the previous years to have a company bite off more than they can chew, right? And then they didn't rebid again. And two, we have increased usage. So that's 480,000. And then tuition, out of district tuition, this number, this $1.2 million increase is based on actuals. This is for students who may be placed in a different educational environment based on need. You pay tuition for those students to go to those schools. Majority of these, we're talking about students who may have IEPs, special needs, that we need to provide an appropriate education for all of our residents. And sometimes that's not us. Case in point, I always revert back to say the wrong thing here when I say services for the blind, but We consistently will have a student at West Hartford at a school for, what's the name of it? American School for the Deaf, thank you, yes. So that's a good example. This year, we're overexpended by 1.2 million in this line, so this is an actuals, and we've made lots of different moves this year so that we don't overspend by $1.2 million. We've had salary freezes and we've frozen different accounts and, but we've had 3 students. Now, sometimes we program for these students and sometimes they come to us already attending. 3 students moved in, the cost for those 3 students was $400,000. So it's not hard to overspend. And we haven't increased this count in some years. So this is a major driver based on actuals. So it's a different type of budget year, a different type of budget request. What we're asking for is the money to operate the schools, not a lot of additions here, and we'll get to that. So here we have a summary of collective bargaining. We have next year, we're slated to bargain with our teachers. This is in your presentation. We have the salary increase and then the net increase, which in most cases is lower because of a give back in insurance or some other kind of give back. So I started talking about everything we do in service of our students, creating robust plans to help them become the vision of the graduate. We're always reflecting and responding, engaged in what can we do better, continuous improvement in all that we do. When we put together our budget, it's important for us to understand the current context and where we're going. We identify targeted enhancements, whether it's a reallocation or an add, whether it's a budget request or we're going to do something and utilize our current resources differently. So our targeted enhancements in this particular budget cycle, most of them are not requiring new money. So one, improved and expanded services for multilingual learners, for our health students. We want to continue with the staff that we've added the last few years, commensurate with the increase in enrollment. Number 2 is going to be funded through the grant, and it is an add of a 0.5 special education teacher and a 0.5 speech and language pathologist. Both of those are based on need, enrollment, and caseloads. No local impact that's funded through the IDEA grant. That's the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. That's an entitlement grant that's not going anywhere. Safe, welcoming, and responsive school climate. We want to continue with responsive classroom and trauma-informed practices. We want to maintain the new schedule at City Hill that we, this budget provided for last year, and the additional safety and security staff at City Hill and NHS that we have added the last couple years. There's an unfunded mandate, or should I say, a partially funded mandate, perhaps, number 4, for K-3 reading. We will, and that's about $750,000 for the new reading program. That's not in this budget. We're in the process of, in line with the legislation, analyzing, evaluating, and selecting a new K-3 reading program. We're going to continue with the district-wide math enhancements funded by Alliance. We've been doing 2 grades a year, so that's been in the presentation the last few years. And we're going to implement a new science program 6 through 8 funded by the Alliance grant. The typical question from this group is, what are you going to do if the grants run out? Right, and that's the short answer is always, well, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And we've had to make some hard decisions for some positions and for some people that have been doing a great job for us, that love our kids. But we have a grant, Project Aware, that is coming to an end. And the majority of the COVID grants are coming to an end. ARP is the last of which. So we are reducing 17.9 FTE positions at the end of this year when the grant money runs out. 7 positions remain next year with ARP. 4 class size teachers, 2 IT techs, and a custodial manager. remaining art money will be allocated for some summer school and some extended day. And then the bulk of it is dedicated to facility improvements and ventilation of what's remaining. Beyond that, we've reduced 11 FTEs. That's a net, that's inclusive of the 2.5s that we're adding. One of the 0.5s that's adding is really just staying. It was an extra that we had added during COVID, and one is new. We are reducing a library media specialist, a secretary, 4 classroom teachers, and 0.5 security. And just so you know, we have 2 positions that are being funded. Excuse me. We originally, and you likely heard this from Chief when he presented his budget in CalSTRS. Excuse me, we had an SRO in the budget that we took out. So that's in addition to the 11, we were proposing to split fund for about 50,000 each, an SRO that would go to the K-6 schools. So we both decided, let's if the context were a little bit different, this might be a little bit, so we'll try again next year, is basically where we left it. So the 2 new positions are 0.5 special education teacher at Hopbrook and a 0.5 speech and language pathologist at the Early Childhood Center. You see the projected salaries funded by IDEA. The reason they're not the same is because we already have the speech and language pathologist, so that's an actual. The other one is a projection. So there's not much when we look at the different series, there's not much to say around benefits, because out of the $842,000 projected increase, 832 of it is the max cap of health insurance. In terms of financial drivers, when you look at purchase services, transportation, tuition, that's the lion's share of the 1.77. There's other pluses and minuses. We have last year we reduced telephone when we switched by 30,000. We're actually saving a little more than that, so we reduced it by another 10,000 this year. Natural gas, electricity, gasoline, oil, that's up a little higher than 11%, 234,000. Custodial supplies, we haven't increased our custodial supplies. We actually, in the last 5 to 7 years, we decreased that account by 20,000. Yet during that time, there's some of the items that we purchase consistently, like toilet paper and garbage bags, have gone up over 200%. In addition, 20,000 of the 95,000 is related to a state mandate for feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms, 3rd and above. We have a Chromebook recycle program that we've allocated Alliance to take care of in this budget cycle. IT budget remains flat. In your budget books, you can find a complete listing on page 27. Capital remains flat. You can, in your budget books on page 30, find a complete list of all facilities projects. So, excuse me, because that was a lot of talking. And we're back at the 67,485,698. That is how we got there.
Do you open up for questions at this time?
Of course.
Anybody on the finance have any questions for Superintendent?
I have a question. Our book doesn't match your thing. We're having difficulties following you all the time. We hear all the things that you speak and say, but we just can't follow it.
Can follow what?
Whatever you're saying, things like, hey, that's not in our book here. We're trying to follow it and keep track of you to make a question,
Okay,
but we can't follow it.
okay.
And
So,
it's hard to remember to ask the whole long story for a question.
This presentation is emailed to us. Yeah, this is email.
Is that not in the book?
No, it was in our email.
I'm happy in the future to provide printed copies of whatever you'd like. I'm always in continuous improvement in all that we do, includes myself, the board, and our operations. So this year, I emailed the presentation in advance. I emailed 15-minute version of what I just did, I didn't spend as much time with the board on financials, but I emailed her a 15-minute recording. And we provided these a little more a week ago to the town. And it's been posted for quite some time on our board docs. So I'm happy to modify the process in any way that you like. I think the best thing for you to do to understand our budget is to go to page 8. So our budget is about students enrollment and the composition of our students in programming. So there's a lot of things in our budget that are different than some other budgets. But if you go to page 8, 9, and 10, the object code comparison, that is a line by line explanation of every account. And then in the object code comparison, on the left-hand side, you'll see the item number for ease of reference. And then to the right of that, the plan page number, which that's where you can find more detail for that particular line in this budget book.
Any other questions? Anyone online? I can't see the online screen.
Yeah, let me do this now.
It doesn't show on the screen, Chris.
Okay.
I know we have a few people on Zoom. So.
Alice is right.
There you go.
Yes,
Where is she?
I didn't see it.
That's all right.
Oh, there she is.
Where?
I just heard right there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Almost.
Okay.
I can't. Any other board members have questions for Superintendent Diane?
Yeah, Superintendent, I just have, it's more of a question of the enrollments. Your enrollment in 2 grades are down significantly, or is that because of bubbles going through the school system? Like it's showing 8th grade going down 22 and 10th grade going down 31 students. Are those the bubbles that go through? Okay.
Yeah, it's a
I thought
bubble.
so, but I just wanted to make sure.
I have a question. For the increase being at the number that we're at this year, it's obviously significantly more. Has there been a recorded time in which a similar percentage-wise increase has been requested in years past? Obviously, a lot of things are up due to inflation, but compared to other inflationary reasons, such as like back in the late 70s, early 80s, or before, I mean, we're kind of throwing this out there, but do you recall, at least in any of the historical records that you have access to, where there's been a over 4% increase in the budget line?
Received or requested?
Received and requested.
Requested, definitely.
Yeah,
Received, I don't know. I would have to go back and I would have, look, we have maybe 10 or 12 years in the presentation.
yeah,
We can go back and put together a comprehensive, list. I will say that our request is in line. A lot of communities are experiencing the same increases.
oh, I wouldn't disagree at all. I think it's reasonable. I just would like to see how it's compared to this type of inflation that has been experienced. I know it's been over 20 years since the last time there's been inflation of such, so
Yeah,
it's just curious to see how it trends.
yeah.
Follow up though, with regards to operating with 11 less FTEs,
Sure.
specifically 4 of them being teachers. So how does that impact the classroom size? And obviously that increases number of students per teacher at the head count level. Like how is that negatively impacting the teacher's experience or positively impacting if possible?
That's a really good question. So class size has been a priority of this board. And when the reduction in the 11 positions does not, any further reductions, I guess I would say, would have a negative impact on class size. That the decisions that we've made thus far were really based on enrollments. So one of the classroom teachers comes from the high school. When we looked, it's an average class size of 19 point something. We were able to do the math and project. If we took it away, it would go up to 22, right? So high school 22, that 23 point something is their actual number. I don't have our spreadsheets in front of us. But while it would be great to have some of those positions, we don't need those 11 positions, in terms of our class size, right? So when we value class size teachers, I think I said at the beginning, the most important thing that we can do is put a high quality teacher in front of every classroom. With the trends in enrollment have allowed us to decrease without significantly impacting class size.
And then finally, with regards to the budget, assuming it was to be approved as requested,
Yes.
if there are additional grants that are received or other forms of funding, I don't know if there's other forms other than grants, has the Board of Education ever considered, or could there be a consideration for a refund back to the town? And maybe refund's not the right word, but maybe a budget allocation that would then be granted back to the borough overall, if there was a surplus in, grants to cover otherwise.
Great question. Anything is possible, I guess is what we would say when we would engage in dialogue. So I think you're specifically speaking to, what if, and I forget the name of the House bill, but if there's a House bill out there that seeks to, so I'm gonna just take one step back. There's a House bill out there that seeks to take the incremental increases that we've been getting each year through Alliance. So some years ago, they have a phase-in for ECS. And it was a 10-year phase-in to support poorer communities more. So the Alliance districts, 35 of us, have what's called the ECS phase-in. Everyone has the ECS phase-in, but Alliance districts, it's the most favorable. Some districts in the ECS phase-in go down. So it's been 600,000, 500,000. We are already counting on almost 1 million of that now in this budget currently. That's netted out. So if the 4 million comes and it's another, if they pay us what the incremental increases that they were gonna for the rest of the cycle, it would be about another 4 million. So we would have to sit down and the board would have to make that decision. But I don't know of any reason that they wouldn't, other than understanding that all of the things that are driving the increase can't be supported by the Alliance grant. That's all.
Yeah, Mayor has some questions.
Comments?
Comments, I'm sorry. Comments. I just ask questions, please. Comments.
Well, first of all, I've had a much longer period of time to look at this being on the Board of Ed, and I understand everything from the cost side. On the revenue side, and going to James' question, 2 points. Number one, I was assured this afternoon that at a minimum, we're going to receive 1.7 million more than what you're projecting. And that if the House bill, which came out of committee, goes through, it's going to be even more, but it's hard to say how much more. So it's comforting for me to think that almost definitely we're going to, cut into that number on the revenue side. Also, I want to have Allison, couldn't be here tonight. I think we'll have before the final vote, we'll have some meetings to go over essentially what James asked, because historically, even last year, when you look at your projected special revenue fund grants at about 8.5 million, they came in quite a bit higher. So how we project that, how we look at it on the revenue side, I think is the only area where we want to go over it a little more closely. We want to stay in close touch with the legislative process, and we understand, at least I understand the cost side. The revenue side is a little harder to follow, but what I'm hearing is all good news from Hartford, and hopefully that's the case. And so when Allison comes back, I think we can, look at some of those items.
Sure. Just so you know, we did meet and review this budget with her too. So this will be a nice follow-up to the previous conversation.
Right.
Do we know when those decisions will be made? Will it be
Well,
after a budget season?
That's another problematic question. They're usually made, like sort of at the end of May, and we do our budget a little earlier, so that's where there's gonna be some, that's where the discussion will get created.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more.
Thank you.
So my final question, and I'm still kind of new to the board, even though it's my third or fourth round of this. It's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm incorrect here. So if the budget was to be approved as requested, 67,485,000, it is my understanding that we can never approve a budget less than this dollar amount moving forward. And that's per a state statute, I believe, and that is accurate. Okay. So for my fellow colleagues on the board, it's just, this is something that we're committing to, not this year. It's at minimum this year, every year going forward. And I'm not opposed to it. I'm just making sure that we're all on the same page, that this is the minimum number that we would be going with every year, at least going forward.
There's one question for you, and I know the answer to this one because we discussed this already, so.
Sure.
What does Northern fit with the other district reference groups for our community as far as spending and budgets pursued?
Okay, I was not expecting that one, Chief.
Just so the other board members are aware where we sit with that.
Yep, we're last in per pupil spending in our dirt. And we're the 9th lowest in the state. So if we were to spend in Naugatuck, what the average per pupil spending, we'd have to add 19 or 20 million to our budget to be average for Connecticut.
And what if you took all those other numbers that the town is paying and added them in, it would change a little bit, right?
No, that's inclusive of those numbers.
That number you just gave me includes those numbers?
It does, yeah.
But the number was the same before we gave you those other funds.
Oh, you mean what I'm asking for now?
Yeah.
This particular budget? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I guess I don't know because we'd have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the easiest answer. Likely, this would close the gap a little bit. But I don't know what other communities have, approved right now.
Yeah, so I just see what's in the papers,
Yeah.
but everyone's asking for more. Do we know where we stand with the other communities as far as what they're asking for this time?
We do. I can't speak offhand, but I belong to ACE, we belong to ACES. So the area from really us down to Milford over to North Branford up to Meriden, that's the ACES group. And I would say we are comparable with most. There's a couple, Derby's the only one that I'm aware of that was able to come in on the lower side. Everybody else, I've heard as high as a 10 or 11, but that was that was 10. That wasn't like in a comparative group to us. So in the area, there was lots of 4s and 5s. Vernon was comparable, 4 and change. And Sonia was comparable, might have been closer to 4 than 4.59. So, I think it's a sign of the times. To James, your point, inflation is driving up the cost on certain things. I don't know that we've seen the increase in tuition. It's that, but it's also sort of compounded by the not increasing that line in so many years. 42.8 is the average age of our employees, certified employees. You had asked me that previously.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Pretty strong staff.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
For me, young staff.
yes.
I have another question. I have an enrollment question. So with with enrollment being basically flat, but with some of our current kids going to magnet schools, et cetera, if that number is way up, the enrollment would have been way up had they not gone to those schools, I presume.
This is true. Yes.
Okay. So it seems like we went up by almost the same amount of new people who chose to go to other schools.
I don't know if I could say it as sort of as tight as that you said, but we certainly have Aces at Chase, and I neglected to say, when Aces at Chase opened up in the old Chase Collegian, that was unbudgeted for us, and now that's $360,000 because
And how
it's
many students is that?
56, please.
Yeah.
56 students go there. So we only have to pay the 6,000 per-ish. But that's in that $1.2 million increase that we're bringing to you too.
I look at it with regard to new construction of homes. If we're staying flat and we're still growing, that's good, which means we could have more homes to get more tax dollars and not have to have additional classrooms, et cetera. So that's my analysis, but I just wanted to ask you that specific question.
Yeah, we definitely have more students that are, we're paying tuition for. I think, though, when we look at the enrollment report, those that are going to magnets has been relatively flat. It's just that they're going to Aces at Chase, which costs us money. So New Haven Public Schools doesn't charge us tuition generally, unless we have to provide for the mandated services from their IEP. Whereas some other schools, like a 6-to-6 magnet school or an Aces at Chase, they do charge tuition. We have about the same going to Nottawag. We provide transportation to the tech schools, to an Emmett, but we don't have to provide tuition. Right? That's a state school, we don't provide tuition. Nottawag, VOAG, you have to have a VOAG program. If you don't have a VOAG program, you have to be coupled with a VOAG school. So you have monstrous high schools like Trumbull High, they have a VOAG program, everything's in-house. Then you have Nottawag, and actually, much more, somebody who knows much more about this field than I do. Nottawag serves, the greater Woodbury area, Naugatuck included. We generally have 40 students who are Nottawag. And that's about 240,000. From a financial standpoint, though, we get more from the state per student than we're paying out. So we still make some money.
But your ECS funding is based on the students just in Naugatuck, or the Naugatuck students that also go out of town?
All of the students associated with Naugatuck. Okay. They don't take away the funding if they go to Nottawag.
Okay.
So it's really a mutually beneficial, I guess, in some ways.
Any questions?
Hey, Steve.
I got a couple questions about special ed. So we got 47 new IEPs this year.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot. Was that a lot of people, like new families moving into the district that already had IEPs, or were we identifying at a higher rate now? Both.
Yes. So our numbers, I think, and maybe at some point I'll stop using the word pandemic or COVID, but what we have with the little ones is that, and I'm gonna keep this brief, but they didn't have all of the experiences developmentally in terms of engagement, social, oral language, and the numbers in preschool they're high. Yeah, so both.
And that certainly makes sense. Working in the Alliance District, roughly the size of this, and the ask from the board is roughly the same. So, and seeing a lot of similar issues like that. But about outplacement, I know that's, I don't know, you know this, like my job a lot of times going in said without said, try to get these kids to stay in district, we got a lot that are outplaced. What are the barriers right now that are, well, I don't even know if we have a lot.
No, we actually don't.
No, but it's
Uh,
expensive.
Is it 27, 29? 27.
27, okay. What are some barriers that of keeping, other than like more extreme cases, to keeping them in district?
Okay, so that's a really good question too. So one I would say right now is there's a mental health crisis going on, right? So we have kids that have significant needs, and sometimes this is not the best place. 27 from a percentage standpoint is not very high. Now, some years ago, we were working with the state, and this data is not readily accessible, and the data that I don't even have the data, but I know the state was like, whoa, you're really low without place. And we take pride on working really hard to keep our students with us, care about them, love them, we want to support them. But sometimes, right, we can't meet their needs. So I think barriers would be the same as running any programs. It would be, additional staffing, even though we know if we open up more sections, it could potentially save money in the long run. But we do have special programming, and our programming is described in the special ed section of this book, the special services tab. I won't get into it, but we have very successful special services program. Many students who go into a more restrictive environment and do a really good job, and then either that's the appropriate environment for them, and they learn and grow and blossom and graduate in those programs. And then sometimes they'll come back into at least less restrictive environment, come back into more of a, for lack of a better term, I'll call it mainstream, but we're supported by resource room environment. And I know you're a practitioner, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that was leading my next question is how successful are we at bringing kids back to district?
That are already outplaced?
That's a really tricky one.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna defer to my expert, Ms. Reichert. That's not, we're better at keeping them here than getting them back, I think, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would say we bring back about one student a school year, typically speaking. But it's a process where, we have to be careful. We don't want to have a student with transitions back and forth. So it's a very careful thought out process.
Yeah, that's telling me that 0.5% of your population is at these outplacement schools. And that they need to be there.
Yeah,
That's
if
what
we were
the
over,
numbers are telling me.
well, thank you.
Yeah,
I
that was-
tend to
that
agree
was-
with you then.
that was good to know.
Any questions? Burgess, Rocky?
Yeah, can you just, first of all, thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Rob.
Can you just briefly touch on your partnership with the borough as far as facility needs, maintenance needs, ground needs, or any capital items?
Yeah, sure. So, first, the fields, right? So athletic fields are taken care of by the town. That's a partnership and a support. We work closely with the capital committee, the building committee, which Bob Beth chairs, as you guys know, probably for a very long time. And so we identify capital projects. We're right now in the midst of applying for a couple of grants to the state of Connecticut for some asbestos flooring removal. And that's along in the process. And we have an outstanding grant for some HVAC that we have not heard back from the state. So I think it's a really good partnership that we meet with the town throughout the year, several times throughout the year. Jim Scully, our own facilities expert on the board, is on the committee, and we collaborate so that we can provide safe, comfortable learning environment for all of our students. We do have schools that are old, and I do look forward to enacting the long-range plan so that we can take some of these older schools offline and have more modern facilities for all of our students. But I'm appreciative for the collaboration with the borough related to facilities. Jeremy Lennon, I can tell you that we're texting with him and calling him at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, I think snow calls for most are maybe not a big deal, but we talk to the police department, guys that are on the road. Jeremy and his guys are up in the morning. Michael's driving around sending me photos between 4 and 4:30, and so he's driving up to Maple, so we know, right, or up to Andrew Mountain, because we know, like, the other snow day that we just had, it was nothing here, and we had plowable snow in Maple. And then Prospect was hammered and Cheshire had nothing, right? So we have some crazy weather patterns going on. So there's a good relationship, it's ongoing, it's collaborative, and we're thankful for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Fran?
Yeah, Chief. Superintendent, we just mentioned a mental health crisis a few minutes ago.
Yes.
And yeah, I look in the budget and social workers, school counselors are down as far as salaries go. When do
Only
you expect it to be up?
you would, but let's go.
Is there a decrease in the number of counselors that we're going to have?
No, there's actually the last couple of years been an increase. So salaries were down probably because high retiree, people left on a higher and we hired cheaper replacements. It's all based on. All right, so let's go here.
Lower salary.
Yeah, yes, lower
I
salaries.
know.
Sorry, I'm looking at the page. So we don't have, in terms of counselors, no, we're the same at 15. Psychologists, there's no change. Social workers, no change. If we look at psychologists over the last few years, we're up 2.4 in terms of psychologists. We're up 1 in terms of school counselors, and we're up 1 in terms of social workers. We also partner with Stokes. So Stokes comes in, and we partner with some other organizations for supplemental support related to mental health in our schools. We are going to be bringing, well, I'll be bringing to the board Thursday, not this Thursday, next Thursday. Yes, I know, sorry, I'm not ready either. Opening up permission to apply for grants to open 2 school-based health centers in Naugatuck, which will, one of the components for the school-based health centers will be mental health. So it'll be dental, it'll be medical, it'll be mental health.
That's great, thank you. I just, noticed that decrease in the dollar amount.
Yes, and whatever I said that you guys were understanding and smiling, thank you. As you know, we have a salary schedule that goes 13 steps. If someone retires on the 13th step, it could be a $20,000, $30,000 difference from step 1, thereby having some salary savings.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that you do for emergency services for us. You're another phenomenal partner. I don't know if you folks know it, but I meet weekly with monthly with fire, police, Kyle Kelly.
Right.
It's good, it's good. It's great collaboration. Good
partnership
going, so it's good. Yes, it's right. It's right in your house there.
Last one, any comments, questions, concerns? Mr. Superintendent? Oh, sorry.
I just have one question. I'm looking at page 69, and it outlines the adopted gross plan salaries in the top part, and then the proposed gross plan. And I was just noticing that the DEI salary is 135 going to 160. Is that correct, what I'm reading, or is that a typo?
That's correct. It's not, it's going from that because it's not an increase, it was a prorated salary. It's a prorated salary, because she did not start at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Superintendent, thank you very much. Jeff, thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Very much. Thank you, everybody virtually.
We'll let you the meeting. Lee, well said.